Alright, like always, let's begin with Digi-Egg cards. I'm playing 4 copies of the BT14 Koromon just to give us our draw power. We find ourselves actually chipping the opponent's security quite a bit with our rookies just to give us that additional draw in the beginning and early stages to make sure we find our pieces. And then for the rookies, you definitely want to run 4 copies of the all-new BT20 Huckmon. This is the main card you want to Digivolve in the back and then push out in the following turn so they can utilize its starter main effect. Trash away a card and you get to draw one and gain a memory, which is really important to have 2 memory to begin so that you can get into your combos as we go into Battle Huck and so on. The inherited effect for the DP buff across your entire board is always great so that you can always make sure that you swing over things during your own turn. For the secondary Huckmon, I'm still running 4 copies of the good old BT61, which is incredibly reliable at helping you search, dig deep into 5 cards off the top of your deck and grabbing you any 2 pieces that you need, whether if it's Huckmon, Jesmon, or Sistermon, anything you need to grab to gather your pieces so that you can continue climbing into your stack afterwards. And then to round up for the rookies, I'm running 2 copies of the Sistermon Blanc that gives you additional draw power in the early stages to help you find and dig deep through your deck. And then otherwise, Decoy is always fantastic to keep your Jesmon stack or your Genku stack protected as well. As we talk about Sistermon, let's move into the level 4 and talk about Sistermon Xiao, which I'm running 3 copies of the BT10-1. This one's always better to play off Jesmon's effect for free. And the thing is, when you play her, you get to Digivolve into a Royal Knight trait. And then when you do Digivolve into Royal Knight or Huckmon, you get to gain a memory back as well. You guys might be thinking it might not be necessary because the new Huckmon, Bao Huck, and Savior Huck line helps you climb all the way by itself without needing her. But there's a very specific combo that she really helps set up a very powerful board, which we'll talk about in the combos later on too. And then now let's talk about the other level 4, where I'm only running the 4 copies of the new BT20 Bao Huckmon. This card lets you play down your Sistermons for cheap or help reduce the play cost of your Genkumon, which is also an anchor point to help you achieve the main combo that you want to get into. Otherwise, with its inherited effect is exactly the same as Huckmon, giving you extra 1000 DP during your own turn across your entire board. That's it for level 4s, and now as we move on to level 5s, I am only running the 4 copies of the new Savior Huckmon. Whether you play it or Digivolve, you get to pop something that's 5000 DP or less, which is great for getting rid of Floodgate rookies or smaller bodies in the early stages of the game. But you mainly play it just because you can use its end of turn effect by suspending one of your other Digimon, whether it be your Sistermon or your Genkumon that you have on board, so they can Digivolve into a Jesmon from your hand. Its inherited effect of Alliance is really important to help you deal extra damage to your opponent's security to help set up lethal. Otherwise, the DP buff is also there to help you swing over your opponent's big boss Digimon too. That's it for level 5s. Now let's talk about level 6s, where I'm playing 4 copies of the good old starter deck Jesmon. Originally, I was actually playing the BT20 one instead, and after playtesting more, I found a very powerful combo that the starter deck one can help you enable, which is a little bit different. But don't worry, I also talk about the BT21 later in the tech choices as well. But back to the starter deck one. Being able to blitz when you Digivolve is really good synergy with your end of turn combo with your Savior Huckmon once you get into it. That way you can make an attack before the turn ends. And I'm also teching in 1 copy of the new Jesmon X from BT22. Just being able to have Piercing, Alliance by itself as well, and swing over unsuspended bodies is really what you want to need as a form of removal for the deck. And its inherited effect does pretty much exactly the same thing as long as you have a Jesmon GX on top, which you give everything that you have on the board, being able to swing over unsuspended bodies and pierce attacks. I even experimented with a completely different version that focuses more on the stack building aspects, and I played it in the latest episode of Battle Vault, so make sure to watch that if you haven't done so yet to see it in action. Otherwise, if you want to see even more different builds for Jesmon, make sure to join the AVAULT Club as I post many of my deck lists and updates over there too. But now let's talk about our other level 6, the master himself, Genkumon, which I'm running 4 copies of. Being able to reduce its play cost by 4 as long as you have a Bao Huckmon and Sistermon on the board, and then you get to synergize it with another 2 reduction of Bao Huckmon, making it 6. You guys might be thinking 6 memory is a lot to pay, but that's exactly what the playstyle of Jesmon now is. You want to hard slam this guy as much as possible, and keep in mind, you're getting a level 6 instantly on the board, which has reboot, blocker, and you also threaten a potential Jesmon gxace. But not only that, itself has an effect letting you Digivolve either your Huckmon up into your line into all-8 Jesmon if you need to, or otherwise you want to Digivolve itself into a Genkumon X. And this is where we'll talk about Genkumon X when I'm running 3 copies of it, being able to de-Digivolve 2 when you go into it, and predominantly having the protection against all your opponent's Digimon effects until the end of the opponent's turn across your entire board. It's just absolutely insane. But that's not all. You get to give all of your Huckmon, Jesmons, and Sistermons reboot blocker in the opponent's turn, and with its inheritable doing exactly the same across your entire board as long as the top end is a Jesmon GX. And speaking of Jesmon GX, as we move into level 7s, I'm running 3 copies of the new Jesmon gxace. This is a card you want to see as soon as possible because by putting down your level 6 on the board, you want to pressure against your opponents as you can always blast Digivolve into it. And the nice thing is that this card is not even a blast DNA, meaning it can just go straight on top of a Ganku, Ganku-X, Jess, or Jess-X itself. And when you get into it, you get to slide another Royal Knight underneath, removing one of your opponent's Digimon with equal or less DP than itself, meaning you can get rid of almost anything as long as it's 16k or lower. And don't forget, this is also a when attacking effect, so you can constantly remove your opponent's stuff as you attack the next turn, and then with its secondary when attacking effect, you get to trash your opponent's top security for every 2 Royal Knights within its sources. Optimally, by having 4 Royal Knight sources underneath it, you can then trash 2 of your opponent's security as you unsuspend or even swing for game. If your opponents ever try to play around it by not letting you counter against them, you can always DNA Digivolve with a Jesmon and Gankumon on the board in your own turn to achieve the same thing. But that's not all Jesmon GXs. I'm also running 2 copies of the good old BT10 version. This card also provides you another avenue to get access into a Jesmon GX during your own turn. As you Digivolve for 5, you can tuck a source underneath that's a Royal Knight trait as long as 13 costs or less, and you get to activate its when Digivolving effect. The fun thing is that you can also tuck in the Jesmon gxace since it's a 9 cost Digimon, and then activate its when Digivolving effect and tuck another source and rack up a lot of it. Afterwards, you want to go ahead and blitz and attack because you gain security +1 for every Royal Knight trait in its sources. And if you're ever swinging to your opponent's Digimon, you get to deal piercing damage. And if you have Ganku-X underneath it, you always get to reboot with a very powerful blocker on your side during the opponent's turn. And that's it for all of Digimon, and you guys might be still thinking, this is such a weird build. Why is there so many level 6s and level 7s? Isn't this going to be crazy bricky? There's barely any level 3s, 4s, and 5s. How can you consistently climb up the stack? Don't worry, because rest of the cards are all about searching to help you achieve that one single combo that you're completely immune, which again, I can't wait to show you guys when we get there. But as we talk about our Tamers, 4 analog use is all you need. Being able to fetch any piece that you need and set up your trash is perfect so that you can Digivolve into anything with Gankumon. Or even your Jesmon GXs can have additional Royal Knights to tuck in underneath from your trash. There is now a lot of trash resource management with this archetype, which is really cool to see in a red-based deck. And then for options, also 4 copies of From Master to Disciple, which is another important searcher of the deck for sure to grab you any piece that you need within the archetype, trashing the rest, doing exactly the same thing as Analog Youth. And then with its delay effect, you can always help reduce your Digivolution cost to help you climb up into your stack a little bit cheaper too. And then for the rest of the options, I got 4 copies of Garnet Memory Boost, just perfect for this deck, being able to search you black and red pieces, meaning you can grab your Gankumon, Ganku-X, your Jesmon GXs, and anything within your line other than Sistermons. Now let's talk about tech choices and other cards you guys can also be running in this deck. Let's start with the Floodgate rookies. You can run any of the Gaussmon, Solarmon, Shamamon, or even Gotsumon, depending on the meta on how you want to counter it. Gotsumon would be the least favorable one just because you do play Digimon off of X with your Sistermons, but in this current meta, Solarmon is a pretty good call, just especially when it comes to trying to counter against Royal Knights, to stop them from reducing their play cost as much as possible. But that can counter yourself a little bit, so you want to make sure that you're playing at the right time with this card. If you want to pump up your consistency and searching even more, you can also run Sisterman CL from the starter deck, as its on-play effect lets you search your top and then trashing the rest, grabbing a piece while at it, which is really good in the early stages to make sure you find what you need. Speaking of Sistermon CL, I also want to talk about the new BT20 mon, Sistermon CL Awakened. This is always nice if you want to play a little bit of a control variant just to stun down your opponent's Digimon. Being able to go into security, Digivolving for free from the trash, 1 is really all you need because you get to recycle it again and again, which is really nice. If you guys really like it, I wouldn't recommend any more than 2 as well. And now let's talk about the BT20 Jesmon, which I still think is a very decent card that you can be playing instead of the starter deck Jesmon. Just because when you Digivolve or when you play into it, you get to play out a token, and that token has Reboot, Blocker, and Decoy for black-red, meaning you can keep your Jesmon stack protected or Gankumon protected as well. With its secondary effect, when you play out another Digimon, which the token counts, you get to pop something that's 8k or less too. Afterwards, any one of your Digimon get to attack, which is pretty much almost like pseudo blitz. Of course, in most cases you want to attack with it, assuming that you have a Savior Huck underneath, you get to alliance together with a token to deal 2 checks, and then you also get to reboot your token afterwards. Although this Jesmon doesn't give you as much of a high output damage compared to the star deck one I'm running now, but it still gives you a lot of versatility and control if you prefer that playstyle instead. Alright, combos and how to play this new Jesmon gxace deck. First off, with your starting mulligan hand, you want to see your rookie Huckmon, which you can Digivolve in the back, the searching Huckmon to grab pieces, but you guys can see there's a lot of searching cards overall. Garnet Memory Boost, From Master to Disciple, Analog Youth, all these cards we're maximizing at 4 to help us ensure that we can find all our other pieces which is going to be our Bao Huck, Savior Huck, and then Jesmon onwards, eventually going into Gankumon. The whole idea is to add cards in the trash while you're doing so as well, and then we want to find our Systemon CL so that we can play off Jesmon for free, and then we can potentially continue to climb up that way. So for the first combo, I want to show you guys the basic understanding of how to utilize Gankumon to provide your board immunity until the opponent's turn against all their Digimon effects. One memory is all you need, and you want to have a Huckmon in the raising BT20 ready to go. So you're going to go ahead and push out and going to use a starter main effect. Go ahead and toss away the gxace so that you can gain a memory and draw a card. Afterwards, since you're now at 2, Digivolve into Bao Huckmon for the 2 costs. Next, all you need is the Gankumon so that you can play out the Gankumon. When you play it out by itself, you get to reduce the cost by 4, but you want to use Bao Huckmon's effect to further reduce it by another 2, passing your opponent to 6 memory. When you play out this guy, you get to choose one of your Digimon to Digivolve that's level 6 or lower from hand or trash as your pieces, which is hence why we want to go into this gxace. By Digivolving into it for free, by going to gxace, we can de-Digivolve 2 on one opponent's Digimon, but most importantly is to gain that immunity. What this does is that establish a potential threatened ace against your opponent's next turn. Although giving the opponent 6 memory is a lot to work with and is not the most optimal, but establishing this level 6 on the board instantly, you get to friend a blast ace into a gxace against your opponents. If they ever attack you, just go ahead and Digivolve into it. The cool thing is that Jesmon gxace is still immune to your opponent's Digimon effects thanks to gxace. For combo number 2, it's going to be very similar to combo number 1 with Huckmon in the back, and this time I'm going to show you guys how you can establish an even stronger board state that is going to be indestructible, and you can also deal damage to your opponents, setting up yourself for the win condition in the following turn. First, you're going to push out the Huckmon just like before and use its starter main effect, that this time trash a Savior Huckmon from your hand to draw a card and gain a memory. Just like before, Digivolve into Bao Huckmon for the 2 costs, and then use its main effect to play out your Gankumon with a reduced cost of 2, and with Gankumon's own reduction, you're going to pay 6 in total instead. This time, instead of Digivolving into gxace, you're going to use Gankumon's effect to Digivolve your Bao Huck into your Savior Huck from the trash for free. Savior Huck is going to Digivolve and delete something that's 5k or less, and then now since the memory gauge has passed to your opponent's side, you're going to use the end of turn to suspend your Gankumon so that you can Digivolve into Jesmon. Jesmon, when Digivolving, is going to blitz and make an attack right away, using its second effect, allowing you to play a Systemon CL specifically from your hand. Now that you play Systemon CL, Jesmon's going to gain its last effect with extra 3000 DP and security +1 for the turn. Systemon CL's on play effect is now going to kick in, letting you Digivolve your Gankumon into gxace for the 2 cost. Since you Digivolve it into gxace, Systemon CL will gain your memory back. Finally, with Savior Huckmon's inherit effect, you can alliance the Systemon CL alongside with the Jesmon checks to make 3 security attacks with 24k DP. And once you pass your turn, Gankumon is going to provide you Reboot, Blocker, and all Digimon effect immunity across your entire board. In other situations, if you ever have your memory boost or your delay options that can utilize, you can end up giving your opponent fewer memory to work with on their turn. And this time, since you established 2 level 6s on the board, that means you're threatening the double Jesmon gxace if you have it in your hand against your opponents to further delete their Digimon if they ever try to attack into you. In this case, even if you pass your opponent to 7 memory, this board is still incredibly difficult to out since the Gankumon X protection gives you immunity across all Digimon effects from your opponents, where a lot of removal comes from the source of that. That means that your opponent will have to play option cards in order to actually break this board. For our last combo is a follow-up from the previous turn. If your opponent is not able to address this board, your opponent will be at least down to 2 security because of the 3 checks that Jesmon did in the prior turn. And as long as you have Jesmon gxace in your hand and your opponent tried to play around it in the previous turn, there's always the proactive solution that you can go into it yourself because you're going to finish the game immediately right here. Of course, always just hatch and then Digivolve in the back if you need to, just to draw extra cards. DNA Digivolve into Jesmon gxace. By DNA Digivolving into yourself, you want to make sure that you tuck a Royal Knight underneath to delete something with equal or less DP than it is. Since Jesmon gxace has extra 2k buff here, you can delete almost anything from the game which is 18k or lower. And since you did Digivolve into a Royal Knight trait, Systemon CL is going to gain you extra memory. At this moment, you want to make sure you have 4 sources underneath Jesmon GX, and the reason is that when you attack with it, you're going to trash 1 security of your opponents for every 2 sources that is a Royal Knight. Jesmon, Ganku-X, Ganku, and Jesmon GX. That's 4 total, meaning you're going to trash the remaining 2 security and swing for game. That's not all. If they have additional security there, you still get to unsuspend off Jesmon gxace, and you still have 2 extra attacks to finish it off if you ever need to. Make sure to get your very own Initialize Spar collection on the AVAULT store right now, and definitely watch the latest Battle Vault episode to get exclusive discount codes for this latest drop. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video, and this is AVAULT signing out.